We are only 3 games into the Premier League season. And I don't know about you, but I have felt almost every single emotion that a football fan can feel in these first 3 games. I have felt a lot of happiness in specific moments, and I have felt a lot of sadness in specific moments. But now that there's a couple weeks off of Premier League action because of the international break, I decided to go back and rewatch the games against Arsenal, against Fulham, and against Burnley. And I wanted to see what exactly is going on with Manchester United because when you look at it, the underlying numbers, the underlying stats are quite good for Manchester United. And I know a lot of people don't really like looking at the data, and I know a lot of people will only say and I know a lot of people will say it's only been 3 games, and that's all fair and that's all true. But the reality is, we can only analyze what we've seen this season. And what we've seen was, in my opinion, a really good performance against Arsenal, in which we deserved a minimum of a point. A very good 30 minutes against Fulham, where I thought in the second half we were not good enough. And I think didn't deserve the 3 points and probably should have ended in a draw, in which it did. And a game against Burnley, in where I thought United were by far the better team in the first half, completely dominated. The game should have been completely finished by halftime. And due to individual errors and mistakes, United let Burnley back into the game, and only because of a penalty did United get the 3 points. So I know that there are a lot of people that are saying, oh, United look really good or United look really bad. I think it's a little bit more somewhere in the middle. So I wanted to take a look at what I think is working for United so far in this season and what's not working so far for United this season. So as always, grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your espresso, and let's get into the video. So on the right side in the red is where I am seeing the success of Manchester United, and the left hand side with the white is where I am seeing not so good signs of Manchester United. So in my personal opinion right now, this is the best 11 that Manchester United can field on the right side. With the players available, I think you can argue that Lissandro coming in for Shaw, you can argue pushing Cunha a little bit deeper where Mount is and playing Benjamin Sesko. Obviously, the conversation about Kobe Minu is always going to be there. But I think with the profiles and the way that Ruben Amorim wants to play, obviously we have not seen our new goalkeeper play for the club, but I have no doubt that he is going to end up taking over that number 1 spot. So you're probably looking at the right side and saying, Gabe, we don't play in a 4-4-2, we play a 3-4-3. And you're absolutely right. Before the game starts, when the team sheets come out, this is what it'll look like. It'll look like the traditional back 5 that Ruben plays with the midfield 2 and the 3 across the front line. My issue with this, or one of my main issues with this, as we've spoken about before, is when we're playing with this more so back 5, there are too many instances in where Amad Diallo gets pinned when the opposition has possession. My main concern with this is you are having one of your better creators and attackers, probably and arguably your best 1v1 dribbler, super deep, and giving him, in my opinion, too many defensive responsibilities to have long-term success in the attacking phases. Now, of course, football has changed, and we know that the attacking players in basically any system have to do the work off the ball for their team to be successful. We saw it in abundance with Luis Enrique's PSG. The way that Doué, the way that Dembele, the way that Barcola, the way that Kvaratskhelia, whoever was playing in that front 3 in that front line, they were pressing, they were defending from the front all the time. My main issue with Ahmad being so deep is not so much him having to defend, because I think that it's important for your forward players to defend and to buy into the system. My main problem with Ahmad Diallo having the ball in these deep areas is when Manchester United win the ball back, look at the amount of ground that he has to cover to get into a position where we want him to be, which is here. These are the areas that you want Ahmad to be occupying. These are the areas where he's going to be the most dangerous. So why do I want that 4-4-2 shape off the ball? And I think it can sometimes work on the ball as well. Well, of course, it gets Ahmad a lot higher up the pitch. And when United are defending and they win the ball back, it gives him a lot less ground to cover. Another reason why I really like the 4-4-2, especially off the ball, and even again on the ball, it can be a 4-4-2. Just because it's a 3-4-3 before the team sheet comes out doesn't mean that it has to be that when the game is being played. I like the idea of, and we still don't know the severity of his injury that Ruben Amorim touched on, but against teams that are going to have a lot of the ball against United, we've seen Ruben Amorim's ability to really, shut up shop and defend really well. We saw it at the Etihad. We saw it at Anfield. I thought there were really good defensive displays. Obviously, through touches of brilliance and magic from the opposition, there are going to be opportunities to score. But I think with the profiles that you have, I've spoke about it before, Lenny Euro is good enough to play as a right back. He is going to still get help from Ahmad. It's not going to be a situation where Ahmad is not going to do any defensive work at all. There are going to be moments where opposition tries to overload the wide areas, and Ahmad is going to do the work. But I think even in moments where Ahmad is a little bit higher up the pitch, I think Lenny Euro is good enough to defend these larger zones. I think the exact same thing about Patrick Dorgu. Dorgu is also good enough to cover the defensive zones. People might say, well, the height of the back line, especially the two center halves, could be a worry, especially let's say if Lissandro comes in, and that's fine. But when the ball gets played out wide, let's say the ball gets played out wide into these areas and teams are trying to attack us through this side, you have the ability to have these players in the box. Lenny Euro, De Ligt. You need to have a brave keeper in the Premier League, and hopefully we get that from Lemens. I just think that with the 4-4-2, it just really helps the entire side. I think even Bruno and Casemiro, Bruno gives him a little bit more license in that 4-4-2. Casemiro, less room, in my opinion, to have to cover because Bruno Fernandes can step a little bit higher. We can still maintain that 4-4-2 shape. It can just look a little bit lopsided. Mount can come and tuck in as well. Ahmad can tuck in as well. And I just think there's more room for compactness. And I think that's very important because we've seen a few times when we've conceded goals this season, it's been a little bit it's almost come from nothing and it's almost a little bit too open and it's frustrating. One of my biggest concerns with the left-hand side here is just the overall distances that the players have to cover. When you have two midfielders, and I've spoke about this time and time again, that aren't necessarily physical monsters in terms of the amount of ground that they can cover. Obviously, I've spoke about it time and time again. Bruno Fernandes is someone who's going to cover a ridiculous amount of ground, but he is not what you would call a powerful runner, nor is Casemiro. I think there are going to be moments in games where the game might get a little bit stretched, especially in games where, United are down a goal and they're chasing. My biggest worry, what we've seen from the 5-2-3 or the 3-4-3, is the gaps when Bruno Fernandes decides to jump, because this can oftentimes leave Casemiro very isolated, in midfield. And there have been times where we've seen before where United have gone to press, and Bruno is obviously going to be the player that's going to want to lead that press. And Casemiro is left in an island. And the problem is Casemiro then goes to jump because Bruno has left his midfield space occupied, and there are too many gaps from Casemiro to De Ligt. It's too wide of a margin for the back three to have to jump and cover that space, and then we've just created a very vulnerable position for ourselves to have to defend those transitions. Another thing I like with the 4-4-2 is the ability for Cunha to really drop into these spaces, and we've done a bunch of analysis on this player, so if you want to go and see some Mateus Cunha content, go ahead and take a look at my channel, see some previous videos. But there can be times where Bruno Fernandes takes Cunha's spot and Cunha drops in. Now, is Cunha a center midfielder? Obviously not. But because he's so good at collecting the ball from the center halves, turning and facing and running at players, he's a lot better at it than Bruno Fernandes is. That's just the reality. Bruno Fernandes is incredible at trying to play those final balls. Mateus Cunha is incredible at getting the ball in deeper areas and really running at midfielders and defenders and creating problems. With the 4-4-2, again, if you can have it a lot more compact, you have the back four just a lot more connected to the midfield four. Cunha can really facilitate, and Bruno can make those runs that he typically does. He can find moments where he's running late into the box, where we get players up and wide, and he can be a goal threat, because I think right now we're not seeing Bruno Fernandes enough of a goal threat because he's playing in that midfield two with Casemiro, and then the three are kind of, and Mbumo's very attacking minded. Cunha wants to get forward. Mount does a lot of defensive work, to be fair to him, but I just want to see Bruno Fernandes more involved. And I think if you shift to the 4-4-2, and Ruben Amorim did it against Burnley, I just think you're going to get a lot more output from Bruno Fernandes. Now, again, I have to reiterate, it has not been all good for Manchester United, but I also definitely don't think it has been all bad. I actually think there have been some really good moments, but I do still think that there are some tweaks that Ruben Amorim and his staff can make to help United maybe that 1% more to hopefully turn losses into at least a draw or a draw into 3 points. And don't get me wrong, is switching from that 3-2-5 shape into a 4-4-2 shape consistently going to always work, or is it going to make sure that United just win a bunch of football matches? No. I still think Manchester United are very short in midfield. I still think they could have gone and brought in a left wing back. I still think there is a ton of work to do with this United side, but I refuse to sit here and say that it's all doom and gloom. The defeat to Grimsby was embarrassing, and I thought, this is going to be the beginning of the end for Ruben Amorim and Manchester United. And then they scraped by with a win against Burnley, and that would have been disastrous if they found a way to drop points in that game. And now we're about a week and a half away from the big game at the Etihad, followed by Chelsea coming to Old Trafford in what are two massive games, not only for Ruben Amorim and his tenure at Manchester United, but just for the club in general. If they can find a way to win both of those games or perhaps get 4 points out of those games, I think there will be a very different perspective of what Manchester United can be this season. On the flip side, if they drop both of those games or if they get 1 point from both of those games, I think that all of the negativity that is surrounding the club, or that was surrounding the club specifically after the Grimsby defeat, it's only going to elevate. It's only going to get louder. The questions are only going to continue. And we have seen the emotion from Ruben Amorim in his post-game conferences. And the last thing this club needs is to be dropping more points. So I think for people to really start to begin to believe that this can be a somewhat successful season, in my opinion, 4 points is the bare minimum, but United really need to be aiming for 6. I know it's difficult when you have Pep Guardiola and then you have Enzo Maresca. City and Chelsea are two very good sides, but the reality is that the results are important. And I can speak and speak and speak about how good I think some of the performances have been, but at the end of the day, performances mean nothing if you're not getting the results. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Remember to hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. As always, I appreciate everybody for watching. We'll chat again very soon. Until next time, peace.